Okay. Again. After God gives us the guarantee with all the reward and all the goodness in this world, but he tells us simultaneously, midas, if you abandon the Torah intentionally, knowing it's there and you choose to leave it, and we engage in the vanities of time. When the Jewish people become fattened materially, and we bolt from God. What's bolting? I mean, intentionally. We tell him we're not interested. Could you imagine God knocks on your door and you slam the door in his face? I'm being very descriptive, exactly what we're doing. You know better, and you know he knows, and you say, you're not for me. I have no interest. No interest. And you bolt. The true judge, if a person behaves this way, he will remove from those who abandon Torah all the goodness of this world. Okay? Shane, Chisku Yedeim Livot. Why? It's interesting. Because what is the cause of his rebellion, revolting God? It's only the material. Because he succeeded materially, he believes he's the closest thing to God. He feels secure, he doesn't need God. And he says, God, I'm not interested. So as a result of that, what does God do? If the cause of your revolting against God and repulsing God is the material, so what is God going to do? He's going to take back the material, because that's the cause of the problem. Or maybe aleim kol haros hamonim osa miliknos ol mabo. This is interesting. And he brings upon them all the suffering which deny him a share of the world to come. So they should go into the believing him due to their evil. Very interesting. A person, you walk down the street, you have homeless people. So one time, many of the homeless people, they would beg on the street. If you give money, what do you think they did with the money? Many of them were alcoholics. And they take the money and buy alcohol. So if you'd see a person not giving the dollar or whatever you would give to the person those days, say, you're a heartless person. Heartless. If you understand what he does with that money, you're doing the person a service. Because all he's going to do, he's going to invest it in his problem, in his alcoholism. Today, you're feeding a drug problem. So Hashem says, I've given you all this material, and you had a choice. You could have used it as a means, but you used it as an end. And that's the basis why you rebel against me, you revolt against me. So what does God do? God takes it back. I give you something, and you slap me in the face. Am I going to give you more after you slap me in the face? I withhold what I gave you. And now I said, because of that, I bring upon you a level of suffering that because you don't deserve a relationship with me, I will give you every problem to distract you that you're not going to be able to see it clearly. And people get angry. When people have difficulty, they get angry. Who do they get angry with? They get angry with God. When you get angry with God, what do? You even revolt to a greater degree. That ultimately he's going to go into the oblivion. But of course, this person has to be really extremely transgressional, that he transgressed in a very serious way. Why all these curses coming upon you? Because you did not serve God. Here I give you everything. How do you not serve me with joy and with good hardness? Everything's begrudging. You feel I'm infringing on your life. Well, people feel you're infringing. No, I'd like to go out to the golf club on Saturday. God doesn't allow me. He ties my hands. He wants me to live in a straitjacket. He's putting me in solitary confinement. Is that what he's doing to me? I'm going to break out of the shackles and do what I want. God says, no problem. You do what you want. But if I'm writing the check, I have the purse strings. No more infusions of material. It's over. You could stew in your own brew over here. I'm withholding. So, of course, Atosis asks a question, but we find people, as evil as they are, they don't have a bad day in their lives. And they watch, and they live long lives. And God provides everything, despite their misbehavior. So on that, Tosis answers, the Torah tells us, Meshalim sonov al ponav lavido. If a person has merit, some merit, he has to be rewarded. So the question is, where is he going to be rewarded? In this world, the world to come. Since he has no interest in the world to come, and God has no interest in having him there because he's not interested, God has to pay him off. He has to get his due, reward in this world. As a result of that, what happens? He has no bad day in his life. He has material that he's literally over his head in material, and he lives a long life. But afterwards, when he passes away, he goes into the oblivion. That's the answer. But it's not always that way. Only God knows why. But it makes sense. If God is the cause, he gives you material, and that is the cause of your arrogance and revolting and misbehavior, what is God going to do? Take it back. You have a child, and you spoil the child, and you realize that you spoiled the child. That's why he's misbehaving. What do? You wean the child. You take back to give the child an understanding that it's not him, it's the parent providing. And you have to appreciate the provider. And that's the reality of life. But there's so many decoys not to see it right, because we find people who are evil who have it good. People who are good have it bad. Tzaddik v'ralo, tzaddik v'tovlo. Rasha v'tovlo, rasha v'ralo. The evil have it good, the people evil have it bad, and vice versa. Even devoutly righteous people. So people say, there's no rhyme or reason to the whole deal. God is playing games with us, if there is a God. But where did it all start? By Yishman Shur Vayivot, he quoted the pasuk, because you became fat, you became secure, you believe that you're independent, and you believe that you are the cause of all your success, rather than recognizing that there's a benefactor that led you to this arrogant position, to see things in this arrogant way. Rabbeinu Yonah, we just had it during the week. The Shari Tshuva, he says something phenomenal. We speak about a person who's a letz. Letz means a scoffer, a deprecator. So he says there are many manifestations of a deprecator for many reasons. Certain people feel that unless you're of a certain intellectual ilk, you don't have much value. You're worthless. What's your value? If you're not of a certain economic standing, what's your value? You have no value. As a result of that, he behaves condescendingly to these kinds of people. And he doesn't want to have anything to do with them. And he abuses them. And even if he doesn't abuse them actually, but his attitude towards them is, it's not worth my time. I don't pay attention to them. They're a burden on society. That's what they are. So he says something interesting there. Let's say a person's wealthy. He succeeds. And he sees other people don't succeed. Why does he attribute their non-success, the other people? Because they don't have what he has. He has the ability, he has the acumen, he has the connections, he has the intellect, he has the education. That's why he succeeded. And these other people, they're inept, and that's why they didn't succeed. He says, you know what that is? It's a denial that God is your provider. The scoffer is a person who has this attitude only because he believes he's the maker of his own fate. He's the cause of his success, rather than recognizing that God is the one who provided for you. So the scoffer, it's not only what he puts down the other person and act based him condescendingly and doesn't give him the time of day, but the question is, what is the cause of that? Where did it begin? Because you believe it's you and it's not God. It's a denial that Hashem is the one who actually provided for you and put you on this pedestal. You believe You ascended to that on your own. If that's the case, you know something. God wants nothing to do with you. Because it's a level of arrogance and brazenness not to acknowledge what the truth is and take all the credit for yourself. God says, forget of it. I will have no interest. You know, every one of us suffer from it to a degree. The scoffer is the most extreme level. You know, this mocker, he looks down, people have no value. This is like a person who's literally almost like he's narcissistic. He only sees himself, he doesn't see other people, or only sees people within his own class. Otherwise, doesn't value them, okay? But anybody who has a sense of entitlement, which we all do, we justify many things in life because we feel entitled. I'll give you an example. Person studies an hour a day, Torah, because there's a mitzvah. And then he takes it easy and just whittles away time. And he knows he should be studying more because he has the time available. It's not he has to go to work, he has to attend to the family needs. He has the time. He says, I think I'm entitled to a break. I'm entitled to a break. But what's the basis of entitlement? Because I am who I am. I did what I did. But you realize you could only do what you did because God provided for you to be able to do what you did. And you could do what you did because you have the intellect and the appreciation and everything you came upon because God gave you an ability to have that appreciation. So where is entitlement? If you would be truly humble enough, you wouldn't have the sense of entitlement. The reason why you don't have a sense of entitlement, why you do have it, is because it's me. It's also my whatever basis for my seeing myself in this very positive light is only because it's me. It's I. No, it's God. And if you see it's God, you have no entitlement. And automatically you become humble. So all of us suffer from this to a degree. We all have little aspects of this, of Vayishman because we're fattened, we have this. You know, a person has major problems. He doesn't feel he comes to God with his hand in his hat in his hand. Help me out. It's like you're begging for your existence. You go anywhere. You're not going to leave a stone unturned when you realize you're desperate. I always say, many years ago, I go to a person and say, would you like to study? He says, I'm too busy. Too busy. If you knew what kind of business I run, too busy. I don't have time a day. I said, what about we'll study half an hour a month? A month? You don't understand. I don't have a half an hour in a month. I said, what about 10 minutes a month? He says, I explained to you, a person doesn't have 10 minutes in a month, he has no interest. There's no such thing a person can't find 10 minutes in a month. So what does Hashem do? God forbid. All of a sudden, his wife goes for a mammogram, and the doctor says, we got to check something. We saw something doesn't look good. The wife says to her husband, could you come to me to the doctor? And sure enough, it's a problem. They says, could you come to me to the oncologist? All of a sudden, you're finding time. All this time you're finding. What happened? Before that, you didn't have 2 minutes for God. All of a sudden now, God keeps you busy with all your problems. Where's your arrogance? God took you off your high horse. You thought you are. You thought you were in control. Because you have all this money, therefore you dictate your life, and you're in this secure position. God forbid, nobody knows how when you're going to be toppled off the mountain. You never know. You have people fully healthy. Just speaking to somebody. He was walking. He tripped on the mat in his house, fell. He has a brain bleed. Alan, this is your area. Brain bleed. So they don't know, was it a stroke? Or no, it was due to the fall. That's the reason why he has a brain bleed. Fully healthy. Until then, brilliant person, this, charisma, the works. All of a sudden now, the man's in a coma. What happened? He can't, his driver can't take him to the country club on Saturday to be able to, what's his name? To eat the kosher style corned beef, with his buddies on club and rye and pickles and mustard. Can't do it. And shoot the breeze about the past. What happened? Where's your arrogance? But when it comes to the funeral, nothing less than $100,000 coffin to put the guy into the ground. Maybe you should take that $100,000, better give it to charity and help people who don't have. Doesn't even enter these people's minds. They live for themselves and for their inner circle. That's it. But where does this all come from? It's arrogance. I told over a story, which maybe I said it over on the class, one of the classes. The Maril Diskin, Rabbi Shuleb Diskin, his father was the chief rabbi. I did say it over in this class. I'm not sure it was this group. It was the chief rabbi in Lomzha. There was a city in Poland called Lomzha. And his father was the chief rabbi, was an exceptional person. In the 1800s, Poland was under the control of the Russians. And the Polish king was in exile, and there was a rebellion. And the Maril Diskin's father, Rabbi Binyamin Diskin, was studying in his study, and all of a sudden, soldiers come to his home and says, "You have to come with us immediately." And he has no idea where he's going. And all of a sudden, he's taken to this very large auditorium, and he sees the king of Poland there, sitting on his throne, with all the cardinals and the bishops and all the ministers of Poland, because they're coming to celebrate the victory, that now they regained their independence. And every one of the priests spoke about the future, praising the king, praising this, and Rabbi Diskin didn't prepare for this. And the anti-Semitism in the 1800s was so extreme and so intense. If he would say something that they felt wasn't appropriate, it could activate, terrible levels of anti-Semitism, even a pogrom. So he prays to God that God should put the right thoughts in his mouth and he should say it in the right way. And he tells over a story from the Bible. Yosef initially was a prisoner. He lived in the dungeon for 12 years. Finally, after 12 years were over, within moments, he rose to be in the most powerful position in the world. He was the viceroy of Egypt. He was the provider for the world. So the question they asked was, why did he first have to undergo this level of suffering, being incarcerated in a dungeon, being demeaned and treated like an object, worse than that? So he said, because to be able to appreciate what people's needs are, you have to be in their predicament to understand what it means to be needy, what it means to be abused. If you understand what it means to be abused when you're in a position of power, you don't abuse other people. So therefore, Yosef being the provider for the world, the viceroy, he had to have that experience to have the sensitivities for all mankind to provide for them. So God gave him a first-hand experience of what that means. So now when he's in a position to provide, he's going to provide as he should provide. Identically, he says, the Jews were always under the heel of their masters, because the masters never understood what it means to be under the heel of anyone. But the Polish government now understand what it means to be under the heels of an occupier, the Russians. And with God's help in the future, because you've had the experience, you'll treat the Jews in a better way, because you'll have the sensitivities which you should have. This is what he had said. These people are arrogant. They have short memories. Either they were brought up as part of a wealthy class. My children, they only go to Ivy League schools. They only go to private boarding schools. No. They have their estates. They have the dogs. They have the horses. They have the stables. They have all this. They have the cars. No, they're the elite. If you're the elite, everything else is there just for you to take and to step on. That's all they are. That's what you are. But if you come from that lower echelon, you work your way up, and you don't have a short memory, you treat other people respectfully with their due, and you behave properly. And you don't have that level of arrogance. So the Rambam writes, a person who goes and misbehaves and tells God, I'm not interested, because it's due to Vayishman Shun Vayivot. It's because he became fattened. He assumed a certain level of confidence and security because God provided him with whatever it was. God says, if I'm the cause of that, I'm taking it back. Now you're on your own, but not on your own. I'm not even give you the ability to see it right because you deserve to be punished. And as a result of not seeing it right, you're just going to continue in that negative path, in the sinful path. Then ultimately you're going into the oblivion. That's the Rambam. Story goes back maybe close to 30 years ago. I was invited to a bar mitzvah on Shabbos in Manhattan. It was a Fifth Avenue family. And the person had the meal in those years at his house, Friday night. It was like a buffet in his house. And being very close to this person, which people know who I'm talking about, I don't want to mention his name. And I'm there because he considers me his rabbi. And there was a woman there. She was old enough to be my mother. That's how old she was. And she was the wife of a certain kind of rabbi, which was a certain kind of rabbi. And she sees me and she says to me, what are you doing here? You hear this? It's not her party. She says, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. Here? Do you know what that's an expression? You know where that's coming from? Because I represent a certain, whatever it is, within Judaism, you don't belong here. This is not your place. This is for me to be here, not for you to be here. First of all, what about insulting a person? Forget about anything else. Forget about Judaism. I mean, how do you insult a person that way? This person felt she was so empowered and so high and mighty, and the way she saw me in such a negative light, it didn't even enter her mind that she's embarrassing me. She didn't embarrass me. She infuriated me. When she said it to me, I just ignored her, walked away. That kind of person you can't talk to. There's nothing to say. But you understand, where's she coming from? She believes she is that because her husband is that, whatever he may have been. Mr. Glick used to say, all these people, they claim that this, that. He says, but there's always the death test. What's the death test? When the great rabbis pass away, the great Torah sages, Rav Moshe Feinstein passed away, he had 125,000 people at his funeral. When this guy passed away, he had maybe 60 people at his funeral. So who's popular? Who really attracts positive attention? Who feels the loss of that person? The one that has 125,000 people or the one that has 60 people?
Oh, wait, Maggie Spiegel. You had a good walk? Yeah. Okay, sweetie. Okay.
Rabbi Yoshev had 400,000 people at his funeral in Israel. It was the largest funeral probably since the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, of the temple. Rabbi Yoshev, he was a man, studied, slept 2 hours a night, 3 hours in a 24-hour period. That's it. And the whole world came to him to seek out his rulings of Judaism. Didn't have much to his, he didn't have much material to his name. This certain person came to Rabbi Yoshev and said to him, he'd like to buy his tzitzis, his four-cornered garment, and for a certain amount of money, and to give the money to charity. You hear this? I'll tell you the amount in a second. And Rabbi Yoshev smiled. He laughed. He says, I paid $3 for the tzitzis. You want to give $18,000 for my tzitzis? You're welcome to take it. If charity is going to receive $18,000, more than happy to take it. And he laughed. You know what I mean? Who am I? I did a mitzvah. You want to use it and charity stocker will benefit from it? More power to you. That's it. We feed and feel because this, I'm able now to take $18,000 and, refurbish my house. He lived in his home. If you visited his home, it looked no different than a home in 1918 in Yerushalayim. The walls were lined with bookcases. It was clean, neat, nothing to write home about. All that meant to him was only what God wanted, nothing more than that. When does God withdraw all the blessing and God brings curses? As it says in the Tochacha, in Dvorim, and what is it? Because you did not serve God with joy and with good-heartedness, being good-hearted, I withdraw it. And what is the alternative? You will serve your enemies. When we're under the heel of our enemies, it's not a picnic. It's a torture chamber. What does that mean? The blessings are in a certain context. The curses are as a result of another situation. Klomar, if you served God with joy, ushmartem darko, and you observed his way, his dictate, mashpia lochem brochos ho'elu, he will rain down upon you all these blessings. Umarchi kaklos mikem, he will remove all curses from you, that you should not be distracted. Shetiu penuyim lischake batorah, you'll be free to become wizened through the Torah. You have full focus, no distractions. Lasok bo kadei shetiskul chayim abo, to engage in it, that you should merit a share in the world to come. V'yetiv ilchol la'olam shekulo orol tov, and you merit a world which is all goodness. V'tarch yomim la'olam shekulo orol, and you will be part of eternity. And as a result of that, you merit two worlds. The physical world, you have blessing in this world, and you have blessing in the world to come. You know, we say in Kemach Torah, you have to have the material, the sustenance of the world to facilitate the spirituality. So if you invest it and utilize it properly, not a problem. God provides. As I always say, there's no check that God can't write. And if you're going to utilize that sustenance, that material, the way he wants it, he's going to write more of it. He'll provide more. Because it's only to do what he wants you to do. And you've made the right choice. That's the Rambam. Why does God provide it? Because one doesn't acquire here that wisdom and doing acts of goodness. So how is he supposed to merit a share in the world to come? If this world is only a means to an end, and that means can only come about only if God provides. So of course God's going to provide. Shlomo writes in Koheles, there's no action, there's no computation, there's no understanding, there's no wisdom in the grave. Once a person goes to the grave, it's over. There's nothing to talk about. It's before the person dies. That's the time that we have to take advantage. You know, I always say the life expectancy of humanity has extended itself. One time person, age of 50, 60, person was an old man. Pay people to their upper 80s, 90s, even later. But most people who have this longevity, how many pills did he take a day? How much time did he spend in doctor's offices? It's true. I mean, we're not talking they have robust health. They're failing health. And they have arthritis and aches and pains and they're bedridden. So what's the good of all this longevity? Pull the plug at the age of 55 and end it. What's the value of all this? That's tremendous value. Tremendous value. Because if you see it right, we say that suffering is part of the atonement process. Could you imagine a person suffers, and despite that, he has belief in God, and he loves God, and he still underwrites and supports what God wants him to underwrite and support. Tremendous accomplishment. Not only is he doing the right thing despite everything, But in the context of suffering, he's being atoned. It's part of the atonement process. It has infinite value. Even if a person can't speak, he's a comatose state. But because he is that in that state and he's suffering, and he had in mind, he was an observant Jew, he's paying his debt. So when he leaves this world, he's debt free. So what's the value? Has plenty value. Now, years ago, they used to have a thing called the Golden Age Club. What was the Golden Age Club? That's what they used to have, the diner credit card, diner. You know, today they don't even know what that is, diner club. So what was people, they couldn't wait for their retirement. And when they retire at what age, 65, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. Literally, you work and you're involved in the rat race for 65 years. And now you have a pension and you have this. Now what do you do with your life? So what? The women sit and play mahjong, and the men sit and they play cards. And what, they whittle away the time? What's the value? You mean you've killed yourself all life that you should have these moments, sit idly, and to enter into a state of senility. That's what it's about. But that's a reality. Even people wealthy, they traveled the world. How many times could you travel the world? How many times could you talk about the special vintage of wine that you could afford that other people can't afford? You know, after a while, it becomes you don't want to hear about it any longer. But people, they live in their own cocoons and their own realities, their own fantasies. Well, what's the value? It has no value. These people miss the boat. Instead of having 6 Rolls Royces, take all of them, turn it into cash and give it to charity. They could do that. But no, because how many people could say they have 6 Rolls Royces? It's all the ego. They got to feed that ego. That's the monster. That drives people. Pirkei Avos, we read, Al Tabel She'efna Eshne. Person says, you know, he reaches 40, he has enough to cover his needs, and he should take time to study Torah. He says, no, when I have time, I will study. You know what the Mishnah tells us, Shemelo Tipone. That moment may not come, it won't come. Either because the person is not going to be alive, or there's always going to be reasons why you delayed further. Procrastination is the downfall of humanity. You procrastinate, because anything you really have no interest in doing, just push it off. Today they call it kicking the can down the road. God forbid, you know? You kick the can down the road. Judaism is the can that you're kicking down the road. But of course, I only have the nicest Shabbat table. Sterling silver, crystal, the best linen, and this and that. But that's not what Judaism is all about. It's living like a Jew. With humility, observance, studying. That's what it's about. It's not having the beautiful, and you have a waitress who comes and accommodates all the needs of your guests. And the whole world speaks of what kind of host you are. Your hospitality is one of a kind. When people left Avraham Avinu's house, he was the ultimate host. What did they speak about? They spoke about monotheism. They came in pagans, they left as monotheists. That's what it was. And the Gemara tells us that Avram's hospitality, King Solomon, at the height of his power, was the equivalent of his hospitality. So he treated people like royalty. It was the table of royalty, but what was the objective? It wasn't that he had a table of royalty. It was only as a means to bring him to monotheism. That's what it was about. Reichman, Paul Reichman, as I mentioned, that it was the wealthiest observant family in the world. The Reichmans from Toronto. Paul Reichman was a financial genius. He saw a deal. Nobody saw the deal the way he saw a deal. And he himself was a great Talmud Chacham. He studied in a regular yeshiva. He even was a Rebbe in Tangiers for many years before he moved to Canada. And his son said, when he would have a deal, he really was very wealthy. What was the basis whether he did the deal or not? You know what his father used to say? This is his son said. He has a son. His name's Barry Reichman. He said, his father would look at the deal. He says, how much charity could I give from the profit of the deal? If he couldn't give enough tzedakah, he didn't do the deal. So the criteria, whether he does the deal or not, whether it's worth his while, how much charity could he give? You understand? It wasn't to become wealthier. He was wealthy enough, and he gave plenty of charity. But if there's an opportunity to give more charity, then I'll do the deal. And if it didn't meet that criteria, he passed on the deal. You know what this is? This is a Kiddush Hashem. He was a sanctification for God. His focus and his means, everything was driven by that.